The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the normal kind that comes at dawn, when the city still clings to the last threads of sleep, but a deeper, unnatural hush that felt deliberate, as if someone had pressed a mute button on the entire world. My phone screen was glowing faintly on the nightstand, the blue light washing over my hands as I reached for it. Dozens of unread messages scrolled across the screen from friends, co-workers, even my landlord, each of them saying the same thing in slightly different words. Did you dream it too? I didn't need to check twice to know what they meant. My skin was already crawling. I had seen it as clearly as if I had lived it. A narrow corridor without windows, lit by a single swinging bulb. The walls were lined with locked doors, each painted a different color but with no handles. Somewhere far ahead, a clock was ticking, not steady, but uneven, like it was winding down. And then that voice, low and close, almost whispering into my ear, "Choose only once." I had woken with my heart slamming against my ribs, the words still echoing in my head, tasting like copper in my mouth. It would have been easy to dismiss it as some stress-induced nightmare, but the messages told me otherwise. Everyone, or nearly everyone, had dreamed the same thing. The news broke within the hour. Morning anchors sat stiffly in their chairs, their forced calm barely covering the panic. The phenomenon was being called the synchronization event, though scientists and psychologists were already on air proposing milder, less threatening names. By noon, the story had a new twist. A private research facility on the outskirts of the city, a place most people hadn't even heard of, claimed responsibility. They called it Protocol Iris. Their spokesperson, a sharp-eyed woman in a gray suit, appeared on every channel. This was a controlled, large-scale psychological experiment designed to study decision-making under conditions of shared subconscious stimuli. No one has been harmed. The data will help us understand human cooperation and choice patterns. It sounded rehearsed. Too smooth. I watched her speak and felt something cold slide through me. No one had given consent. No one had signed anything. Yet somehow they had gotten inside our heads. My friend Lena called in the afternoon, her voice trembling. She told me she had gone back to sleep after the first dream, hoping to shake it, but it had come again. The corridor, the ticking, the voice. And this time, she said, she had tried to open one of the doors. It wouldn't budge, she whispered. But I heard something behind it. Like scratching. Her words lodged deep in me, a splinter I couldn't pull out. That night, I didn't want to sleep, but exhaustion dragged me under anyway. The dream was waiting. The bulb swayed, casting warped shadows across the walls. The ticking was faster now. My palms were damp. And then the voice again, "Choose only once." This time I reached for a door, not because I wanted to, but because something in me felt compelled, as if my hand no longer belonged to me. My fingers brushed the cold surface of a green-painted door. For a fraction of a second, I thought I heard a breath on the other side. Then I woke, drenched in sweat, my chest aching as though I'd been holding it too tightly. Over the next 3 days, the city began to fracture. People obsessed over what the dream meant. Social feeds filled with theories, mass hypnosis, government mind control, a marketing stunt gone wrong. Others believed it was prophetic, that choosing a door in the dream would alter something in the waking world. Protocol Iris released no further statements, except for one cryptic update. The first phase is complete. Phase 2 begins at 2 o'clock tomorrow. That night, Lena disappeared. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the normal kind that comes at dawn, when the city still clings to the last threads of sleep, but a deeper, unnatural hush that felt deliberate, as if someone had pressed a mute button on the entire world. My phone screen was glowing faintly on the nightstand, the blue light washing over my hands as I reached for it. Dozens of unread messages scrolled across the screen from friends, co-workers, even my landlord, each of them saying the same thing in slightly different words. Did you dream it too? I didn't need to check twice to know what they meant. My skin was already crawling. I had seen it as clearly as if I had lived it. A narrow corridor without windows, lit by a single swinging bulb. The walls were lined with locked doors, each painted a different color but with no handles. Somewhere far ahead, a clock was ticking, not steady, but uneven, like it was winding down. And then that voice, low and close, almost whispering into my ear, "Choose only once." I had woken with my heart slamming against my ribs, the words still echoing in my head, tasting like copper in my mouth. It would have been easy to dismiss it as some stress-induced nightmare, but the messages told me otherwise. Everyone, or nearly everyone, had dreamed the same thing. The news broke within the hour. Morning anchors sat stiffly in their chairs, their forced calm barely covering the panic. The phenomenon was being called the synchronization event, though scientists and psychologists were already on air proposing milder, less threatening names. By noon, the story had a new twist. A private research facility on the outskirts of the city, a place most people hadn't even heard of, claimed responsibility. They called it Protocol Iris. Their spokesperson, a sharp-eyed woman in a gray suit, appeared on every channel. This was a controlled, large-scale psychological experiment designed to study decision-making under conditions of shared subconscious stimuli. No one has been harmed. The data will help us understand human cooperation and choice patterns. It sounded rehearsed. Too smooth. I watched her speak and felt something cold slide through me. No one had given consent. No one had signed anything. Yet somehow they had gotten inside our heads. My friend Lena called in the afternoon, her voice trembling. She told me she had gone back to sleep after the first dream, hoping to shake it, but it had come again. The corridor, the ticking, the voice. And this time, she said, she had tried to open one of the doors. It wouldn't budge, she whispered. But I heard something behind it, like scratching. Her words lodged deep in me, a splinter I couldn't pull out. That night, I didn't want to sleep, but exhaustion dragged me under anyway. The dream was waiting. The bulb swayed, casting warped shadows across the walls. The ticking was faster now. My palms were damp. And then the voice again. Choose only once. This time I reached for a door, not because I wanted to, but because something in me felt compelled, as if my hand no longer belonged to me. My fingers brushed the cold surface of a green-painted door. For a fraction of a second, I thought I heard a breath on the other side. Then I woke, drenched in sweat, my chest aching as though I'd been holding it too tightly. Over the next 3 days, the city began to fracture. People obsessed over what the dream meant. Social feeds filled with theories, mass hypnosis, government mind control, a marketing stunt gone wrong. Others believed it was prophetic, that choosing a door in the dream would alter something in the waking world. Protocol Iris released no further statements, except for one cryptic update. The first phase is complete. Phase 2 begins at 2 o'clock tomorrow. That night, Lena disappeared. The corridors of the facility stretched endlessly, a labyrinth of doors, monitors, and shadows that seemed to lean toward me, whispering secrets I was only beginning to comprehend. I had expected emptiness, or at least some controlled responses from staff, but what I found instead was someone moving in the same shadows, someone who was not part of the display screens, not a projection, not a monitor, but undeniably human. A figure emerged silently from the corner, face partially hidden under a hood, eyes scanning the data terminals with a precision I had not anticipated. For a moment, we simply stared at each other, two intruders in a place that seemed to punish intrusion with invisible forces. Then they spoke, voice low and calm. You shouldn't be here, yet I suspected someone like you would come. I narrowed my eyes, cautious. Who are you? Another researcher? Part of Protocol Iris? The figure shook their head slightly, pulling back the hood to reveal sharp features, dark eyes that had seen more than they should, not part of them. I've been here longer than you can imagine, watching, waiting, guiding. Some call me a saboteur, others a ghost. But right now, you need to trust me if you want to save her. My heart skipped. Lena. They nodded. She's trapped in the secondary protocol loop. Each iteration rewrites a fragment of her memory. If it continues, she will forget you, herself, everyone she loves, until nothing remains but a shell following instructions. I swallowed the lump in my throat, the weight of urgency pressing down. Then help me get her out. The figure smiled faintly, not warmth, but assurance. We can, but the path is dangerous. Protocol Iris anticipates interference. Every move we make is tracked, recorded, and countered. If we fail, we become part of the data ourselves. I followed them through twisting passages, each step a calculated risk, the glow of the monitors casting pale reflections that danced across the walls like ghosts. We moved silently, and they explained what they knew. The facility was more than a simple experiment. The archive, the entity behind Iris, had been cataloging human behavior for decades, using dreams, simulations, and direct neural influence to study obedience, morality, and choice under pressure. Each participant was unknowingly contributing to an ever-growing algorithm designed to predict social collapse, influence societal trends, and test moral boundaries without the public ever realizing it. And Lena? I pressed, anxiety clawing at my voice. She volunteered, unknowingly, to a test within a test. The figure replied. A fragment of her psyche is already isolated in the deepest loop. The door she reached in her dream is not just symbolic. It's a gateway to her consciousness inside the system. Only by interacting within the loop can she be rescued. My stomach twisted. Interact in the dream? They nodded. Yes. Protocol Iris allows certain intrusions. Rarely. But someone with your connection to her, your bond, it can anchor her, guide her through the loops. You will be the first to attempt this consciously. I blinked. Consciously? You mean I can enter it deliberately? The figure hesitated. Deliberately is optimistic. You can interface? Yes, but the system resists. Your mind will be tested. Your choices will have consequences. Your moral limits, your emotional endurance, all of it will be under pressure. You may not come back unchanged. I clenched my fists. I didn't care. Lena was more than my friend, more than a dataset. She was real, and if the system wanted to erase her, I would meet it head-on. They handed me a small device, a sleek neural interface, almost like a helmet, wires delicate and strange, humming faintly as they adjusted to my presence. Once you enter, they said, the dreams will respond to your consciousness. The clock is ticking, not literally, but in iterations. Every second outside is several within. We do this carefully, or she will be lost before you even start. I nodded, swallowing fear and disbelief alike. Then let's go? I activated the device, and immediately, my surroundings dissolved into a swirl of colors, sounds, and textures I could not identify. The sensation was disorienting, not quite weightless, not quite solid, as if my consciousness had been plucked from my body and suspended in a liminal space. Then I saw her, Lena, standing at the end of the corridor from our shared dreams, a green door ahead of her, her hands trembling as she reached toward it again. She didn't see me, but I could feel her fear, her hesitation, the fragments of panic and memory that were slipping from her mind. I focused, sending mental signals, hoping my awareness alone could guide her. The corridor shifted in response, the walls stretching, narrowing, doors multiplying. Each choice she made created echoes, some beautiful, some horrifying, and I had to navigate the echoes, anticipate their consequences, and protect her psyche simultaneously. I whispered her name, though she could not hear me in a conventional sense. Slowly, I felt a connection form, a thin thread of recognition. Her steps faltered, then steadied. But the moment of hope was brief. A shadow emerged from one of the doors, a manifestation of her fears, programmed by the system to destabilize her. I lunged mentally to anchor her, but the shadow lashed out, and the world around me fragmented, forcing me to confront memories I had buried, regrets I had hidden, every moral compromise I had ever made. Pain, guilt, and doubt flooded my mind, yet I could not let go. Lena's awareness flickered like a candle in the wind. I grasped the thread of her consciousness, whispering courage through the void, until she turned, truly seeing me, recognition lighting her eyes. The shadow recoiled, confused, disrupted by the bond we shared. Together, we moved toward the green door, step by agonizing step, the system pushing back at every turn. Behind us, corridors twisted, clocks ticked irregularly, and doors shifted, but we held on. And just as the first glimmers of reality began to pierce the dreamscape, I realized the truth that the figure outside had hinted at, but never fully revealed. Protocol Iris was not merely a test of obedience or choice. It was an experiment on love, loyalty, and the human capacity to anchor one another amidst chaos. And if we failed, the consequences would not only erase Lena, but also fracture the fragile reality outside, leaving the city's population adrift, unaware of the moral collapse that had already begun. The moment we stepped through the green door, the corridor behind us vanished, replaced by a vast emptiness that stretched beyond comprehension, a void where time and space seemed suspended, and every heartbeat echoed, as if the universe itself were holding its breath. Lena's hand trembled in mine, her grip weak, but her eyes were wide with a mix of terror and hope that made the fear inside me sharpen. The system reacted immediately, corridors forming around us in impossible angles, walls folding into themselves, and doors appearing like anomalies in the air. Shadows flickered at the edges of our vision, remnants of failed choices, fragments of other participants who had never returned. I realized, with a cold pang in my chest, that these weren't just simulations anymore. Each echo, each shadow was a memory, a consciousness trapped by Protocol Iris, and every misstep we made threatened to add our own fragments to the growing labyrinth. We have to move fast, the voice of the figure outside whispered in my mind, though I wasn't sure if it was real or another projection. The system is recalibrating. It knows you're here. Resistance will escalate exponentially. I could feel the corridors tightening around us, a pressure not just physical but mental, a psychic force designed to break our resolve, and Lena whispered, almost inaudibly, "I don't know if I can keep going." I squeezed her hand, forcing steadiness into my own voice despite the tremor I felt. "We have to, just one step at a time. Together." The shadows reacted instantly, swirling faster, converging toward us in intricate patterns that mimicked our movements, learning, adapting. My mind strained to maintain the connection with Lena, to anchor her consciousness as the corridors twisted and doors multiplied, each door representing a choice with unknown consequences, some safe, some devastating. I realized, with dawning horror, that the system was not just testing us. It was creating a predictive algorithm for human failure, a map of morality under pressure, and if we faltered, it would use our own fears and guilt against us. A door appeared, painted black, unmarked, and I sensed a surge of danger from it, a ripple that made the void around us pulse. Lena instinctively moved toward it, as if compelled, and I had to drag her back, the shadow manifestations lashing at our awareness, creating pain and doubt, feeding on hesitation. "Do you understand now?" The external figure's voice intruded again, sharper this time, urgent. "Every decision here is amplified. You cannot hesitate. You cannot second-guess. One miscalculation, and she, or both of you, will be irretrievably lost." I nodded, my mind racing through moral equations, trying to determine which choice could preserve both of us. And then I saw it. Another participant, a young man, trapped in a loop, repeating the same fearful gesture toward a yellow door that opened only to reveal more void. He glanced at us, eyes wide, screaming silently in the vacuum, and I felt a pang of responsibility. We could not leave them behind, but attempting to help him would fracture our focus, risk failure. The weight of impossible decisions pressed down, and I realized the full scope of the collapse. Protocol Iris was no longer just an experiment. It was a moral crucible designed to break the mind, to test loyalty, sacrifice, and the limits of human endurance. The void around us shivered as if reacting to my comprehension, and the shadows intensified, striking at Lena's consciousness directly, forcing her to relive memories of loss, betrayal, moments she had buried deep, until she staggered, nearly collapsing. I reached out mentally, pushing fragments of courage and recognition toward her, whispering her name, and felt the connection spark, weak but persistent. I grabbed her hand and forced us both forward, toward a door that flickered blue, the color unnatural, signaling a pivot point in the system. We had to enter, to confront whatever Protocol Iris had prepared for those who reached this depth. As we stepped through, the void fractured, and a wave of sensory overload hit. I felt every memory, every choice I had ever made, tested and cataloged, as though the system itself were reading my soul. Lena cried out, her mind flickering between clarity and confusion, and I realized that if I faltered, she would be lost entirely. The figure outside spoke once more, tone grave. "This is the final collapse phase. Once you enter, there is no turning back. The system will challenge your morality, your loyalty, and your capacity to endure. You may succeed, but only at a cost you cannot yet measure." My heart pounded. I had no choice. Together, we moved into the room, the floor solidifying beneath our feet after endless void, and found ourselves in a space that resembled the original corridor from the shared dream, but magnified, infinite in scale, the walls lined with every door we had seen, doors representing decisions, fears, and fragments of countless lives. The shadows coalesced into forms more defined, almost human, faces contorted with agony and despair. They reached out, whispering names, memories, regrets, and I realized with chilling clarity that these were echoes of the real consequences, not simulations. My grip on Lena tightened, and I forced both of us forward. Every step was met with resistance, the doors shifting, twisting, and some opening only to reveal more shadows, more challenges. Lena's eyes met mine, filled with determination I had not seen before, and together, we pushed through, feeling the strain of the system testing our limits. I began to understand the principle of the collapse. The archive was forcing us to confront every moral compromise we had ever made, every fear we had buried, every instinct toward self-preservation. To survive, to save Lena, I had to sacrifice pieces of my own certainty, my own control, and guide her through the labyrinth of fear without succumbing to despair. The final stretch was approaching. A massive door, painted in the pale gold of a memory neither of us could fully grasp, loomed ahead. Shadows clawed at our awareness, tugging at our bond, and I felt the presence of the system pressing against my mind, a weight that threatened to split consciousness itself. Lena faltered, and I held her, whispering courage, anchoring her identity as I had promised, even as the void of potential failure threatened to erase us. And then, as we placed our hands together on the golden door, a surge of understanding flooded me. Protocol Iris had pushed us to the edge, collapsing not just the corridor or our dreams, but our moral and emotional boundaries, showing us how thin the line was between obedience and rebellion, love and sacrifice, sanity and oblivion. The door quivered, the shadows recoiled, and I realized the choice we were about to make would determine not only our survival, but the very shape of our humanity, leaving me with the terrifying certainty that no one who emerged from this collapse would ever be the same. The golden door groaned as we pushed against it, resistance mounting as though the archive itself were testing our resolve, gauging the limits of our endurance, and calculating the moral weight of every decision that had led us here. Shadows swirled violently around us, not merely haunting forms, but sentient projections of fear, doubt, and regret, clawing at the edges of our consciousness with every heartbeat. Lena's grip tightened on mine, trembling, and I realized that our bond, fragile as it was, might be the only thing keeping both our minds anchored in reality. The moment we stepped into the room beyond, I was assaulted by an overwhelming cascade of images and sounds, memories not our own, ethical dilemmas replaying endlessly, each choice branching into consequences too vast to comprehend. Faces of participants who had entered the system before us flickered in the walls, each expression a testament to anguish, confusion, or compliance, some gazing at us with accusation, others with silent pleas, and I felt the crushing weight of responsibility as if every soul in this archive were counting on our decisions. The figure who had guided me outside the dream now appeared beside us, calm yet tense, whispering, "This is the final test. Every action, every thought, every hesitation will be evaluated. You must confront the ultimate moral dilemma. One wrong step, and the system will claim both of you, adding your consciousness to the archive, irreversible and eternal." My mind raced, seeking clarity amidst the chaos, scanning the room for the source of control, and I saw it. A central console pulsating with energy, screens streaming data in incomprehensible sequences, each symbol representing an individual, their choices, their failures, their potential for moral collapse. And there, at the heart of the interface, blinking crimson, was Lena's fragment, flickering with instability, the system's invisible hands tugging at her memory, threatening to erase her completely. "We have to reach it," I said, voice trembling with urgency. Lena nodded, determination overcoming fear, and together we navigated the maze of shifting platforms, dodging projections of ethical dilemmas so vivid they forced us to relive our worst decisions and deepest regrets. A door appeared to my right, painted black, the shadows of those who had failed spilling from it in a torrent of despair. The figure cautioned, "Every choice will have a price. You must weigh survival against principle. Do not falter." I swallowed the panic rising in my chest, remembering the moments that had led us here, and realized the true nature of the test. The system demanded that we compromise, that we bend morality to achieve survival, and yet the only way to rescue Lena was to maintain integrity, even at immense personal cost. Lena hesitated at a fork in the corridor, the system manifesting two paths, one easy, promising safety and swift extraction, but leaving countless others trapped, their consciousnesses condemned to the archive. The other perilous, exposing us to greater danger, but offering a chance to free not only her, but others as well. Her eyes met mine, wide and fearful, seeking guidance. I felt the full weight of choice pressing down, realizing that our decisions now would reverberate far beyond our own survival. I whispered, the harder path. We save more than ourselves, even if it costs us everything. She nodded, courage igniting in her gaze, and we advanced. The shadows intensified, a violent storm of collective fear and manipulation, assaulting our minds with images of failure, of loss, of impossible outcomes, and I fought to maintain the thread of connection between us, the only lifeline in the torrent of moral and emotional chaos. Each step toward the central console was met with resistance, as if the archive itself were attempting to rewrite our minds, forcing us to question our bond, our loyalty, our values. I felt doubt creep in, insidious and cold, whispering that perhaps compliance, surrender, or self-preservation was the wiser choice. Lena faltered, and the system's grip tightened, pulling her consciousness toward oblivion. I reached for her, both physically and mentally, anchoring her to the present, whispering fragments of our shared memories, of hope, of defiance. We are together, I said, voice firm despite the tremor in my hands. We are more than this system. We decide. The shadows recoiled slightly, disoriented by our resolve, and the central console pulsed brighter, signaling the point of no return. I approached, hands hovering over the interface, feeling the data stream surge against my mind. Every life, every choice, every ethical compromise laid bare in a torrent of information. The system tested my capacity for empathy, judgment, and sacrifice, forcing me to choose between immediate extraction for ourselves or risking everything to liberate the consciousnesses trapped within. I hesitated, the magnitude of potential failure suffocating, and then I saw Lena, her eyes steady, trust unwavering, and I knew the choice had been made together. I pressed the activation sequence for mass release, my mind bracing for the backlash, and the room erupted in a blinding surge of energy, the corridors fracturing, the shadows screaming as consciousnesses flooded free, some collapsing into awareness, others vanishing in confusion, but all liberated from the system's manipulative grasp. The archive's influence recoiled, walls shaking, doors collapsing, and we were thrown to the ground, gasping for breath, the void around us collapsing into fragments of reality. And yet, despite the chaos, Lena's hand found mine. We were battered, disoriented, but alive, the first sparks of dawn filtering into the shifting space as if signaling the end of the test. But the moment was bittersweet. The figure beside us, calm as ever, observed silently. You have succeeded, they said. But success carries its own weight. You have challenged the system, disrupted the equilibrium, and in doing so, exposed yourself to consequences outside its scope. You are free, but not untouched. The collapse you endured has altered not only you but the moral balance the archive had maintained. Reality will adjust, and the world will notice the ripples, though they may never understand why. I looked at Lena, exhaustion and relief mingling with a new awareness of fragility. Every consciousness freed, every shadow dispersed, had left traces, echoes that would influence decisions, morality, and society itself in ways we could not yet perceive. And the final revelation struck me with a weight that settled deep in my chest. Victory was not a return to normal, nor was it pure triumph. It was a choice, made under unimaginable pressure, that defined the limits of our humanity. We had saved ourselves, Lena, and countless others, but the cost was immeasurable. We had confronted the deepest layers of fear, obedience, and moral compromise, and emerged changed, aware of the fragile thread that separates ethical courage from surrender, and the knowledge that every future decision, no matter how mundane, carried the weight of what we had survived. The console before us powered down, the last images of trapped consciousness fading into obscurity, and the shadows receded, leaving only fragments, whispers of what had been. Lena collapsed against me, exhaustion overwhelming, and I held her, realizing that the archive's reach might never truly end, that other protocols, other tests, and other ethical crucibles awaited. But we had faced one of its greatest and survived, together, irrevocably changed, yet alive. The space around us shifted once more, not violently this time, but subtly, as if reality itself was recalibrating after the chaos we had unleashed. The golden door, now dulled and inert, stood behind us, a silent witness to the collapse we had survived. Lena's hand remained in mine, her grip weary yet insistent, anchoring me to the present while my mind still grappled with the echoes of every moral test, every choice, every shadow we had faced. We stepped forward cautiously, each footfall a reminder that the world outside might not recognize what we had endured, that our victory was measured in fragments of consciousness freed, lives spared, and the unquantifiable cost of altering the system's equilibrium. The figure who had guided us appeared once again, this time fully visible, eyes calm, voice measured. "The archive will remember you," they said, "and in remembering, it will adapt. Your choices have changed the template, and yet, the system will continue, though differently. What you've done is significant, but it is not absolute. Nothing is." I swallowed hard, the weight of that ambiguity settling like a stone in my chest. Freedom was ours, yes, but the responsibility for what came next, the ripples we had set in motion, lay squarely on our shoulders. Lena released a shaky breath, and I could feel her trembling, the exhaustion of the ordeal finally overtaking the adrenaline that had sustained us. "Do you think it's over?" she asked, voice fragile, tinged with uncertainty and relief. I hesitated, knowing the truth. "No," I admitted, "it's never really over. The archive may have been disrupted, but it's not gone. Other protocols exist, other experiments, other moral crucibles. What we survive today, it changes us, but the world beyond those corridors might not notice yet." She looked at me, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and understanding, and I realized she grasped what I had just acknowledged. Our survival had not simplified the reality we had returned to, it had complicated it. Outside, the facility's silence was almost tangible, a stark contrast to the chaos within. Every monitor, every console, every system interface lay dormant, yet I could sense the subtle hum of potential, the quiet persistence of an intelligence that had been momentarily unsettled but not destroyed. We had liberated those trapped within the loops, yet the archive, in all its vast and unfeeling complexity, would continue to evolve, adapt, and test. The figure approached, placing a hand on a terminal as if closing a chapter, and spoke again. "You have done what few could. You have confronted fear, uncertainty, and moral collapse itself, and survived. But the archive is not simply a machine. It is a reflection of the human condition, our choices, our compliance, our capacity for empathy and cruelty. Your actions have altered its reflection, but the world beyond remains full of dilemmas, experiments, and tests of conscience. Remember this when you step back into the ordinary." I nodded, words failing, my mind still swimming in the tidal wave of experience that had brought Lena and me here. She leaned against me, exhausted, but her eyes were bright, alive with recognition, not only of me, but of the strength she had discovered within herself. "We changed something," she whispered. "Even if it's small, even if no one knows." I held her tighter, feeling the truth of her words settle between us. Yes, we had changed something, something fundamental, and yet, the moral cost was undeniable. We had sacrificed fragments of certainty, endured unimaginable psychological pressure, and confronted the raw edges of human morality in ways the outside world could not comprehend. The corridors began to dissolve around us, the void giving way to the semblance of reality, the facility's walls materializing faintly, the hum of normality creeping back. Yet I felt the lingering presence of the archive, a reminder that nothing was ever truly gone, that the experiments, the dilemmas, the moral crucibles, would continue in one form or another. Lena and I emerged into a dimly lit chamber, the door behind us disappearing into nothingness, and we were met by silence, the quiet of a world that had not been touched yet by the consequences of our choices. We had survived, yes, but survival now carried the weight of awareness. We had glimpsed the raw mechanism of human decision, the architecture of morality under pressure, and the realization that every act of compassion or cruelty, every compromise or defiance, was catalogued, observed, and echoed in ways beyond our comprehension. The figure lingered for a moment, then nodded, as if acknowledging both our victory and the burden it entailed. "Go," they said simply. "The world awaits, but remember what you faced. Your choices will continue to matter, whether anyone notices or not." We stepped forward together, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I allowed myself to breathe, though not without the echo of moral dilemmas still reverberating in my mind. Lena turned to me, eyes searching. "Will it follow us?" I shook my head slowly, uncertainty still gnawing at me. "It may, or it may be changed. Either way, we carry what we've learned and the choices we made. That is our responsibility now." Outside the facility, the city remained unaware, bustling and indifferent, oblivious to the profound experiment that had just unfolded beneath its feet. The sunlight filtered through clouds, ordinary yet fragile, and I realized the stark contrast. Human life continued, unaware, fragile, yet resilient, and the moral weight of survival, courage, and empathy rested quietly within us, unseen but unbroken. We walked side by side into the city, carrying the awareness of the archive, the lessons it had forced upon us, and the realization that the greatest experiments often occur not in laboratories or facilities, but within the human mind, in the choices we make when confronted by fear, uncertainty, and the infinite complexity of morality. And as we moved through streets unaware of the labyrinth beneath, I knew the truth that the archive had forced upon us. Freedom was never absolute, morality never simple, and the consequences of choice extended far beyond the moment, echoing in unseen corridors of society, consciousness, and conscience. Lena squeezed my hand gently, and I understood. Though the moral dilemmas would never cease, though the echoes of the system would linger in subtle ways, we had endured, we had resisted, and we had survived together, carrying forward the knowledge that even in a world shaped by observation, manipulation, and ethical complexity, the human capacity for courage, loyalty, and moral choice remained irreducible, fragile, yet enduring, and that the final lesson of the archive was not one of control, but of responsibility, awareness, and the quiet, persistent power of conscience.